Good evening, everyone, and happy Sunday. Let me begin with, I have been bombarded with phone calls it's going on like a month now, about some of the buffoonery that's been going on the news center, which is what I'll refer to it as. But especially today, I know that there are a lot of things that have to be clarified. I'm not going to address, all of the buffoonery that's being spoken of on that particular group page, but to the best of my ability, I will address some pertinent issues that might be of concern to the community at large. My name is Hope Marable. I am a lifelong resident of the city of Mount Vernon, New York. I patron my local library since I was a young toddler. And I'm the board president of the library. I serve at the library with a collective board of 5 members. The vice president is Trustee Kim Harper, who was elected in 2024. The board secretary is Ms. Cynthia Crenshaw who was elected in 2025, and the 2 remaining board members are Trustee Cynthia Crenshaw, also elected in 2025, and Trustee Loretta Thomas, who was elected in the year of 2023. Okay, I'm not going to take up a whole lot of your time, but I do feel as if some of these items should be addressed. And as you know, you don't always have the time to cover all of this stuff during a board meeting, because the purpose of board meetings is to conduct the business of the library very efficiently. So I'll cover as much as I can to mitigate that task at the time of our next board meeting, which is scheduled for Wednesday, January the 28th at 6:30 p.m. I believe we'll be meeting in the community room, but if not in the community room, we would probably be meeting in the teen library, but we'll absolutely be at the library at 28 South First Avenue at that time. First and foremost, the library's coffers are not empty. That is absolutely not true. Our finances are in good standing. I made a social media post attached to a press release from the Westchester District Attorney's Office. And the date of that correspondence was on about the year of 2024. Let me be very clear. As you know, there had been some past issues with the library's finances, but as of 2024, our ledgers are fully reconciled. We are not overspending. We are not recklessly spending. We are not misappropriating money. And in 2024, the district attorney's office went so far as to exonerate the board as it existed, exonerated the board from any malfeasance. What was reported was that there were issues with the accounting, and also with perhaps management. What you guys need to realize is library trustees are not employees of the library. The employees that were engaging in that particular pattern, more or less, are no longer working for the library. And those issues have since been mitigated. So we're in great shape. We have a treasurer. We're in full complement in our finance department. We have a treasurer and we have a chief account clerk also. Now, speculation about Dr. Kirchner's visit. Dr. Kirchner, yes, he is the director of the Westchester Library System. The Mount Vernon Public Library is a member library. Most of you learned that information from me when I was running for re-election in the year of 2023. To make a long story short, the board president, I invited Dr. Kirchner to the January 28, 2026 board meeting. I invited him gratuitously because we happen to have 2 very fresh two new board members, Trustee Dickerson, Trustee Crenshaw, neither of which has had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Kirchner. So I thought that this was a great idea to bring him in to visit the board in the month of January while the library board is doing its governance review. We're building our compliance calendar for the year of 2006, which has to do with New York State Education Department guidelines. We're going to be reviewing our annual budget for the year 2026. And the most important thing is the compliance calendar. All of these items are going to be prepared by the library director, the board president, and the board's treasurer and the committee chairpersons. Dr. Kirchner isn't coming to the library to whip any of us into shape. That's totally unnecessary. And for someone to make a sensational statement like that based on assumption, it's very, very irresponsible, especially someone that's bragging about being a library professional. And I'll stop there at that point. Next thing, there is no such thing as a probationary registration. Our library is registered. We were never not registered. We were in peril of perhaps losing our registration back in 2022. That is correct. We were under what they called a review application process. That process had been looming since on or about 2014. You can't point the finger at anyone in that regard. The regents have oversight over the Mount Vernon Public Library. So I don't know why the task had not been completed until 2024. Okay. All I know is that when I was there, I began to do what I had to do. And I had the support of my fellow board members to their complement. The board was comprised at the time of Oscar Davis, of, Ms. Williams, of, Trustee Gleason, Vivian Salmon. We all did what we had to do to try to get the library registered, at which point we were there, voted in, appointed, whatever the case. So the library, that review process was completed in December of 2024. And there is no such thing as a probationary registration. As for 8 New York CRR section 90.2, you can look it up and see, is there any reference to such a thing? No, there is not. So it's absurd for anyone to even make that calculation. In regard to 101 Summit Avenue, first and foremost, Axel Eberman is not empowered to block a library from pursuing a bond proposal. He can't do that. And so for someone to say that he put in okay, yes, he submitted an Article 78. That is true. The outcome of that was that Judge Goodwin, she did nullify that particular resolution, which was 099-24. The reason why it was nullified is because I was ill, the board president. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, my remote location had not been properly posted to the library's website. Again, library trustees are not employees, but all the same, our employees are human beings. And as we all know, anyone and everyone can from time to time make an error, make a mistake. And in this case, that's all that was. So what did we do? We went back to the drawing board as was instructed by the judge. And on May 13, 2025, the board voted once again in favor of acquiring 101 Summit Avenue. By the way, the purpose wasn't for us to have a clubhouse or a hangout. The purpose was for us to expand library services. We thought it was a really great idea because it happens to be the childhood home, the home of E.B. White, Elwyn Brooks White. E.B. White is the legendary, the iconic author, Pulitzer Prize celebrated author of Charlotte's Web, Stuart Little, Trumpet and the Swan. He was the associate editor for New Yorker magazine forever. He was a frequent visitor of 101 Summit Avenue all the way into his late adulthood because his parents lived in Mount Vernon until they passed on. And so did two of his siblings. So these were real live Mount Vernonites. And we simply wanted our children to have the experience of walking through the doors of the home of E.B. White and the place that he grew up in, the place that molded him here in Mount Vernon, New York, for them to have that experience to inspire them to perhaps be the next Pulitzer Prize celebrated author. So these were good intentions. So yes, it is true that at the December 10th board meeting, the board did indeed vote to rescind on that particular resolution in regard to 101 Summit Avenue, which would have been E.B. White Library. There is only one reason, and one reason only, why we rescinded on this. It's because of the tax increases, not just with the city of Mount Vernon. The county is increasing on taxes. We took that into consideration and realized that it was just not appropriate to ask our community for a bond proposal. We accepted that for what it was. And contrary to what people might say, we do take in full account the concerns of the community, and it's never the case that we don't. So there is that. It's off the table for a bond proposal. I do not know what the status of 101 Summit Avenue is, but I wish them well. I wish the seller well in that regard, and we can move on from that. But again, there's no one in this community that can block a bond proposal. That's ridiculous. And you can refer to education law, section 259. And I believe I'm looking at section 1A, part 1A and B, I believe that is. Forgive me, my eyes might be deceiving me a little bit. Okay, so in regard to, now, let me clear this up. The reason why the vote for the acquisition, for the bond proposal, the reason why it was voted on in executive session is because it is what you call, it's a real estate transaction. And it was a real estate transaction, whereas the publicity would have substantially affected the value of the property. And so it was proper for us to speak of that particular item in executive session and come to a consensus. We did publish the vote at some point. Another thing that people have to realize is that we have employees that work at the library. Some people have FMLA. Some people have sick days. Sometimes we don't have staff at a particular board meeting. And sometimes it is prolonged when things are published. And I'm sorry about that. But again, human beings, listen, it happens sometimes. And when it does happen and when we are able to correct it, that is absolutely what we do. So it was absolutely valid to have those discussions in executive session. And you can refer to, you can refer to Public Officers Law, Section 105, 1H. Okay, and that has to do with open meetings law. And so everything was fine in that regard as far as the May 13, 2025 vote that was taken. Okay, now the comptroller's report. I have not had the opportunity to read the comptroller's report in full. What I will divert to is this, though. The library's coffers are fine. We're not overspending money. We're not in the red. There's absolutely nothing for anyone to be concerned with in regard to the library's finances. And a lot of hard work, due diligence, a lot of sweat and tears have gone toward that effort, to have our accounts in good standing and to make sure that we're in full complement with staffing and that we have a great running finance department. Now, here we are. Now, in regard to signatories, the reason why the chief account clerk was added as a signatory along with the treasurer, it was a fiscally responsible decision because, unbeknownst to the board members, positive pay had been added to the account. When we discovered that positive pay had been added to the account, it was pointed out to us that there was only one individual with the positive pay credentials, and that was the treasurer. And so the prudent thing to do was to have added the chief account clerk as a signatory also, along with 2 other board members. It was totally appropriate. There's no impropriety involved. There's no overlapping. There is separation of duties in that respect. It was exclusively for the purpose of having 2 employees in the finance department, and it was solely for the purpose of enabling them to approve for positive pay. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing clandestine, and absolutely nothing for someone to be furious about. In regard to Hudson Forensic Solutions, yes, we did pay them about $10,000 to update our policy handbook in regard to our finances. When we were audited in 2024, that was one of the suggestions. The auditors never said that our internal controls were sloppy. The auditors never said that. What the auditors told us was that our policy handbook was outdated, which we already knew and had already began to make allowances for. And so the auditors came in and they reiterated that to us and they pointed it out and we got right on it, and we retained Mr. John Luffrin from Hudson Forensic Solutions to update that policy manual. We have a great rapport with Hudson Forensic Solutions, by the way. I am the trustee that vetted this particular vendor, that and to the compliment of my fellow board members at the time, this was a resolution that I wrote that unanimously passed for us to embark on a forensic audit. The forensic auditor was able to help us get past our 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024 annual reports. The 2000 up until 2003 annual reports were holding us back from closing out the registration application process. So this was a big win. This is a great partnership that we maintain with Hudson Forensic Solutions. I know there's a redhead running around town claiming that she and her fellow trustees that they're the ones that spearheaded the forensic audit. That is absolutely false. There is no truth to that. This forensic audit was totally spearheaded by Hope Marable, Oscar Davis, Vivian Salmon, and Caitlin Gleason. End of story. Okay, and anything beyond that is just not the truth. So then we have, let's see one of the other falsehoods that are being spewed around. And you have to forgive me for being casual, but I am in the comfort of my own home. I'm not going to mince words. I'm going to speak a bit freely while still being respectful with my tone. Okay? As far as fundraising, we are in partnership with the Links of Westchester County, Hudson Valley. That is a partnership that we embarked on, I believe, last October, and they will be assisting us with fundraising. And so, no, the library is not solely relying on the tax levy. In spite of the fact that we're still in great shape, we're not solely relying on that. The Links has partnered up with us to embark on the renovations to the children's library. And happily, I will tell you that the children's library is now dedicated as the Parker Young Children's Library, okay, at Mount Vernon Public Library. Cecil H. Parker was the first African American school teacher, I believe, in New York State. And Clinton Young Sr. was the first African American principal, I believe, either in Mount Vernon or Westchester County. Trustee Crenshaw can give you a little bit more of that history, but the board thought that this was a great idea after Cecil H. Parker, that historical elementary school, had been shut down. So now when our children go into that renovated space, which will soon be renovated thanks to a partnership to the Links of Hudson Valley and Westchester, they'll be walking into the doors of the Cecil Parker Clinton Young Children's Library. And we are very proud to have memorialized that for our community and for our library patrons. Now I'm closing up with this. I covered the Links, the Children's Library. Also, the board has assembled a 130-year anniversary committee. That committee is being chaired by the Honorable Ruth Hassel Thompson and Dr. Larry Spruill, co-chaired by Dr. Larry Spruill, the city's historian. So far, we have two board members that are part of that committee, myself and the board president and Trustee Crenshaw also. And we want 7 members in total, which is what we voted on. And so we are seeking 3 more members for that particular committee for anyone in the community that is interested. DMX Day. The board had the money to pay for DMX Day, and it was at no sacrifice for the payroll account. If you know anything about budgeting, especially nonprofit budgets, by the way, in particular, first and foremost, a non-for-profit budget is not meant to be a slush fund. It's not meant for us to have like a whole lot of excess money at the end of the year. That actually causes inquiries from auditors when you are a nonprofit. When you're a nonprofit, you're literally supposed to be spending nearly everything on the library services, which is precisely what we do. A budget is a roadmap for your future, for your year ahead, and possibly the next year beyond, if you're lucky enough. However, it's not stringent, okay? And so, you got to forgive me, but people really show their ignorance when they make these sort of inflamed statements about, oh, they went broke and they sacrificed payroll to do DMX Day. That is absolutely ridiculous. We had even considered a transfer from the Reader's Digest account to cover the cost of the program because we do have that endowment. But at the end of the day, we didn't have to do it. So we kept it the way that it was. And that is not the only program that gets a little pricey. We also have Comic Expo. Comic Expo, which everyone comes and enjoys every year. That's another program that exceeds about $25,000 annually. So I don't hear anyone complaining about that. So I don't know what the issue is with DMX Day. He was born and raised in the city of Mount Vernon, New York. Not raised he spent his early life in Mount Vernon, New York. He was born at Mount Vernon Hospital. And yes, his formative years was spent back and forth between Mount Vernon, New York and Yonkers, New York. So, and that particular day, it was such an educational experience for everyone. We had so many children, young adults. There were at least 600 people in the room that stayed all day long. Throughout the whole day, there were over 1,000 people, and the library director and his staff, they calculated that at least 30,000 people visited the library during the month of December simply because they knew that we were the library that was going to be hosting the family of Earl DMX Simmons. In regard to the library director's bonus, okay, I don't know why this is a thing, but I'm going to explain to you what it is that occurred with that. The library director goes through an annual review every single year. That annual review is done in executive session. It's done in executive session as per open meetings law. I may not have written down the statute. Hold on one second. But at any rate, we do not conduct the library director's annual review in public. We go into executive session, we conduct his annual review, and it's totally in compliance with open meetings law. And that was indicated to the public before we had gone into executive session that day. You want to know where the money came from? The library used to have an assistant library director. That individual was making a salary. She was making a salary of $80,000 a year. Okay. So that's $80,000 that we have in our coffers. All right. The library director's salary is approximately $130,000, I believe. We set the wage for the library director. He is our employee along with the treasurer, the board treasurer. All right. I have to be tactful while I'm speaking of this, so forgive me if I'm being thoughtful, because these are personnel issues and it's sensitive. He has a salary of about $130,000 a year. I believe his salary plateaus at $170,000. This is what I can tell you. If it's a plateau of about, I believe it is $170,000 where it plateaus. And if the bonus had been at $15,000 plus $170, 5 is 8, that's 1, 7, 8. Okay. That would have put him at $185,000. That would have been illegal. That would have been illegal because he is a civil service employee with a title. And if we were to give him a bonus, the bonus cannot go beyond the plateau of his salary or even the existing plateau. Okay. Because people do get mandatory, step increases and what have you. So what I'm trying to say to you is this. The library director did not receive a raise in wages. His salary remains at $130,000. He received a bonus based on merit. It was a one-time bonus. What I will say is that yes, the $15,000 was supposed to have been voted on in public, but the board had been in executive session. We came to a consensus that we would give the library director this $15,000 bonus based on merit, which has to do with the library being registered, with us having our 501c3 retained and maintained for the past few years, with a lot of great successes that we've been having at the library, too many to mention. So he's been doing good enough of a job where we felt as if a bonus was appropriate. Now, I called in order for that resolution to go on the agenda for the 12/10/25 board meeting. I was surprised when I arrived at the meeting and saw that the resolution was not there. When I saw that resolution was not added to the agenda, that is when I immediately made sure that it was written into the minutes so that it can be addressed at the January 28, 2026 board meeting, at which time we will absolutely vote on that $15,000 one-time bonus in public. Okay. So what else is there? I think that's about it. I mean, I'm obviously not going to answer to all of the buffoonery. I'm just not going to do that because a lot of it, sometimes you have to consider the source at times. All right. And I'm going to speak. One more thing. Tax levy. I didn't make up any statute in regard to the tax levy. It's a statute, period. I just got hold of my reading glasses. It is a statute. The statute is Education Law Section 259I. Okay? And yes, we voted on it, Resolution 085-25. The school district usually gets their money, their tax money in January and July. When they get theirs, we're supposed to get ours. And so all we did, we just wanted in stone that when you get yours, we'll get ours. We're supposed to get it twice a year. And so no, the school district did not save the library when they sent us our money. It's our money. Okay. And we're gonna get it. That's why we have a separate treasurer from theirs for that very purpose, to make sure that our tax levy funds are protected and secured. So, again, I'm going to go, like I said, I'm not going to answer all of it. I'm done. This is a Sunday. What I couldn't believe is that someone would wake up early on a Sunday morning when most sensible people, and I don't mean, and let me be thoughtful with this, because I know that everyone, there are people that observe the Sabbath on different days of the week, right? Me, myself, I'm a Christian. I observe the Sabbath on Sunday. Okay. I begin my Sabbath on Friday evening. Sunday is my day to meditate on the word, to go into my quiet place of the Lord. I might not make it into the doors of the church, but I am intentional in making Sunday a sacred time of the week for me, so that I will be enabled, empowered through God's grace to survive the week ahead. Okay. And that is something that my parents instilled in me since I could talk. All right. So when you see people getting up early on a Sunday morning to spew iniquity and to lie and say, oh, it's not because I don't like this person. Oh, sure. Okay. I don't think anyone believes that. I'm going to leave you with this. And I can say this. I'm sorry. I can, because it's documented. When you see this person on the Mount Vernon News Center, when you see that face, you need to start asking that individual some hard questions. If you have a master's degree in library science, why are you not employed at a library? That's a question I have for that individual. I would love to have the opportunity to ask her that. If you have a master's degree in library science and you're running around talking about you're somebody's advocate, why is it that you are not employed at a library, but yet you're pretending to be a library professional? Listen, a library professional works at a library. That's what library professionals do. They work at libraries. Advocates for libraries, they speak about our programs and what the library has to offer, and museum passes and all of the great things that libraries can do for you. And if they see certain issues that they don't like with a library, they form an alliance with the board members and they say, hey, what can I do to help you? They don't get on the Mount Vernon News Center on a Sunday morning with diarrhea of the mouth. That's not what a library advocate does, okay? I'm sorry. I got to keep it real. And before I keep it too real, I'm going to sign off. But what I want to say is this. I want to thank people. I want to thank everyone, my friends, my family, my community, my tribe. I want to thank each and every one of you for supporting me throughout the years. It does not go unnoticed. You know, regardless of the lies that people have told and continue to tell, you guys have always had my back. And let me tell you, you might not think I see you, but I do see you. I see you and I appreciate you. And I understand the assignment. And I know that you're counting on me to keep pushing this thing forward, especially with this library. We don't have a YMCA anymore. This is the greatest after-school program that we can offer our children. A big spot full of books, a big safe space, a place for them to be safe. Okay. I just want you to know how much I thank you. I appreciate your support so much. I want you to know that it is a gift to the library to support this board as it is currently assembled. We have people there for the right reasons that really care about the library. They are not self-serving. They are not. They could be anywhere else on earth Wednesday, the 28th at 6:30 p.m. But they are going to be at your library at a long meeting, facing public scrutiny and criticism and all sorts of crap. So listen, we appreciate you. We appreciate you, and I can't thank you enough for the support. So everyone, God bless you. May heaven smile upon you, and I'll be seeing you soon. I'm gonna see y'all in them streets. All right. Love y'all. Bye.